All right, got that. Good. Thank you, Angela, for those two. And are they backing up, Angela? Are they in the lobby?
Not yet. Let me take a look again.
Okay.
No, they're not backing up. Okay, here
Okay.
we go.
Michael.
We have a few.
You may want to send a note to Tim and ask him if he's having any trouble.
Okay, I can
He's normally he is on it. He's normally, so just to make sure he's okay.
okay.
If you've just joined us, here
I
he is.
think he just
We can see. I know. Hello, Tim. It was so
Hi.
funny. I said, Angela, you may want to touch base with Tim because he's usually right on it. So welcome.
Sorry, am I late?
No, 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 no. It's a minute. We got a minute. Um, Tim, we're delighted to have you. And it sounds like you're going to be briefing a lot of places, and we even have some guests from the Civic Federation.
Oh, okay.
So we're delighted that you could come give us an update. So we will welcome everybody and welcome our guests. And we're delighted to have Tim. He has visited us many times, but I think he has good news this time, and will give us an update of where the Broadband Authority is and what he thinks is going to happen in 22. So
Okay.
Tim, I will turn it over to you, so
Great.
you can
Am I
start.
able to share my screen here?
Yes, you are.
Let me see.
Just a minute.
All
We
right.
can we can see it.
You can see it. Great. All right.
And
So here I'll begin. So yeah, thanks everyone again as always to Mary for inviting me and Frank as well, and to everybody else at ITAC that have been so nice to have me in the past to listen to me and ask great questions. So I just wanted to, per Mary's request, I wanted to come and just give you some updates on what we've been doing since the last time I came to speak to you guys. And so we have some good news. I think we are kind of moving on a path that it's encouraging to us. And so I'm just gonna kind of walk through the kind of steps as we've and that we've kind of taken along the way since probably the last time we saw you. So it begins in the spring, and back in April in 2021, we had through our lobbying of the board members, particularly the board chair Matt DeFerente, we were able to get Matt to put money, allocate money in the budget to do an analysis of the advisability of Broadband Authority. And he put $50,000 towards that. And the we were excited about it that they were going to at least be looking at it. The bad things at the time though was that the budget authorizing language was a little narrowly focused. Basically, it just mentioned that they would be looking at whether they would be doing CBRS, and they were only going to focus on a specific type of affordable housing unit called the committed affordable housing. So it's like the APAs and the AHCs of the community. So it's very narrowly focused and was not what we wanted, but it was what Matt thought he could get through at the time. So that dropped, and we were happy, and we thought, okay, this is something we can work with at least. And so that was the kind of first thing that happened that we were excited about. And then a month later, the U.S. Treasury finally dropped its guidelines for how the local funds from the American Rescue Plan Act should be used if they're going to be used for broadband infrastructure, which was a super exciting document for us to get and read because it was seemingly what happened was that the federal government was basically saying that if you're going to use these funds, you need to meet certain criteria. And so we started to kind of look through this document, and we saw like right away that the feasibility study that the criteria for that was just it wasn't even meeting the U.S. Treasury's guidelines. So what we did is we went through those guidelines and we talked with Matt, and we said, we want to propose how these might be changed. And he said, okay, just You need to go back though and look at the budget meetings and listen to my colleagues had said, and try to frame it around that. So we did, and what we basically said, okay, well the county board members said they want this study to establish some basic facts, and we outlined what we thought what facts should be established. Some of the main ones just being basically, what kind of infrastructure needs to be built, what kind of technology needs to be used. From our perspective, what was really great about the U.S. Treasury guidelines was that they were saying that this infrastructure should be meeting a 100 Mbps up and down symmetrical standard, which basically, for us, our focus has to this point basically been on trying to get the county to look at building out fiber infrastructure, because for us that's the technology of the future, and has the best return on investment, and is just best suited to meet the needs that we have in the community. So that having that kind of 100 by 100 symmetrical basically said that if the localities use this money for broadband infrastructure, it needs to be fiber, which was great. And some other points in the Treasury guidelines was basically that the localities themselves can determine need. They said that a rough guideline should be whether you're meeting 25.3, but they also acknowledged that 25.3 is not a great standard, and so that counties and localities could determine their own standards for meeting what would be basically underserved and unserved, which was great. And then I think basically the other portion of it was that they said that if this is built out to help low income or underserved neighborhoods or households, that that this infrastructure could also be used to serve anyone else that's in that vicinity, regardless of their income level or their need, and including including businesses, including anchor institutions, things like that, because they said that they recognize that to make these projects viable, they would most likely have to have a broader population of subscribers than just low income, essentially. So all things that we had been kind of stressing to the county all along in terms of doing a feasibility study. So we put together, our parameters and sent that over to them, and we started meeting with them again. And one of the major coups for us was that we got Christian Dorsey to kind of come around, and he actually started reading all of this and got excited.
Did we lose Tim? Tim, I think you're muted now somehow. We're not hearing you. Tim? Tim? There is some irony at this happening when Tim, we're not hearing you. You somehow muted. Let's see if I can unmute. Tim? Tim, can you hear us? Tim? Yeah, Angela, you're trying to unmute him, right?
That's
Right.
strange. Okay, let me keep trying.
All right, let's see. And
Did Tim say he was muted?
No.
Yeah, Tim, what you might want to do is come out and end your meeting and come back in. There we go. That's what he did. There we go. Hello, Tim.
Hey, I'm sorry. Yeah, my browser crashed. Yeah, I
Tim, it's just perfect, isn't it? Tech commission, browser crashes. There we go.
Yeah, and I knew I should have opened it in Microsoft Edge or whatever. I should not have opened it in anything else. I never had good luck with it, but Okay. I'm sorry. I will try to make up for some lost time there.
That's all right.
All right.
I think we need to boot Tim's other self so that we get the screen share back.
Oh,
I think your other presence is still showing as in here, and that's what's screen
okay.
sharing.
Charlie, does he have slides?
Yes.
Do you want him to email them to you?
Let's see.
Well,
Am
he's back on.
All right. Let me kill that. Let's see.
Angela, I think if you remove the Tim D ARL Fiber guest.
Yeah, I'm about to do that right now. Here you go.
Yeah. Then the new Tim D can share.
There you go.
Oops. All right. Okay. Sorry. Let's see. Sorry, y'all.
This tech crowd is probably the most patient because we know technology, Tim, so not to worry. This is probably the crowd that you're going to get the most sympathy because we have such an appreciation of how Microsoft interfaces. We can see it now.
Okay. I don't know. Where was I?
You've gotten past the how the federal guidelines, and you were just, I think you were going to probably slide 3 maybe.
Okay.
50K to 200K.
Right.
So yeah, so we basically I guess that's just what I wanted to say is that in the summer we were able to push this parameters out. We converted another board member to our cause, and so we were already, we saw things kind of starting to move in a different direction. And then in October, we held a forum on benefits of community broadband, and we invited 3 representatives of other community networks. One was Deb Sosha. Some of you might be familiar with her. She actually was one of the co-authors of the county's broadband commission from a few years ago that wrote that report on how to use the fiber. And she's over at in Chattanooga now working at their Enterprise Institute. So she talked about all the great digital equity programs they're doing and all the great things they've accomplished with their public network. We have Brad Nosler from Hillsborough, which is a new network. Hillsborough is very similar to Arlington. It's kind of a tech-heavy crowd. The population's kind of similar. They have also 2 other incumbents there, but they've rolled out a municipal fiber to the home network in the last year that was based on their own existing dark fiber network. And they have a really awesome digital equity program where they're doing, providing gig service symmetrical gig service for $10 to low-income households there. And we had Daniel Jones from Portsmouth, who just kind of talked about their experience of using a broadband authority there to do digital equity work. And then lastly, we had Bruce Patterson, who's a consultant now for Entry Point, but Bruce had previously been at the Ammon, Idaho municipal network. He kind of talked about the kind of really cutting edge type things they're doing there with networking technology. So if anyone didn't watch that, I highly suggest going back and listening to it. I can't really even begin to talk about all of the details of it now, but it was heavily attended by county staff from DTS and from the county manager's office. We had a few county board members there as well, so we were excited about that. And so now where things stand is that we've been talking to the county board members. We have not been able to meet with them. We will be meeting with them at the end of this month, but we have not talked with them since the forum. But in a few emails we've exchanged with them, we were told that this feasibility study money has been increased from 50 to 200,000. 3 of the 5 members are in favor of expanding the scope to look at the entire county rather than just a few neighborhoods. The staff, from what we've been told, are working on the criteria for RFP, and I guess we will have a chance to provide some input or feedback on that. And I would say with the state election results, it's hard to say what's going to happen at the state level, but I feel like given the potential for more hostility towards kind of public broadband, especially in municipal areas, the message we would like to deliver to the board when we meet with them is that they should just form the authority as soon as possible, so that even if the law changes in the future, that hopefully it would be grandfathered in. We've seen that in the past with some other. There have been some other precedents for that. And I guess the last thing is that there's a kind of a question mark over the fate of the federal broadband funds. They're generally going to go to the state from here on out. And the state has kind of authorized the Department of Community Development and Housing, or Housing and Community Development, to decide what to do with it. And it seems like they are not really changing the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative criteria very much. It looks like most of this money is still going to be going to rural areas, and it's still going to be not really going anywhere where there's significant presence already by incumbents. So I don't know whether we'll actually benefit from that. I don't think, frankly, that we need it. It would help, but I mean, I think some of this is just a case of how is the county going to use the existing funds that has left over from its ARPA money, and I guess that's the end of my presentation. So I sorry that there was a hiccup, but I don't know if people have questions or if there's still time for that, but I will do my best to answer.
There's absolutely time, and request to put the link in the chat if you could for the presentation you described. That'd be great, Tim.
Oh, okay, yes.
To have somebody do that for you. That'd be great.
I
Questions?
I also think it'd be valuable if we could post that slide deck that was presented.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so Tim, right, Tim, you can send that to Angela and me. That'd be great.
Okay, we'll do.
Questions?
Hey, Tim, Jonathan Adelstein here. I'm trying to figure out what the goal is. Are we trying to get broadband into low-income communities, or what are you trying to do with the fiber network? I'm still a little unclear on what outcome would be sort of a victory here. What's your end goal with the
So I would say it's twofold at this point. I think like the most base goal for us that I want to see is I think the county just needs to form the authority. And that was, if you go back and watch the presentation from the guy from Portsmouth, is that he said, one thing he highlighted in the question, the Q&A, was just that if you're going to do anything with your existing fiber assets, you need to form an authority, because right now, we've had conversation with Jack Belcher, and he said that, because of the way that they're operating under the part of the VA code right now, like they can't place any kind of county-owned infrastructure on private property at all. And if they had an authority, they could do that. So I think that's step one, is that they need to form the authority just so they get better use out of the network they have right now, and there's just be greater leverage for them, or later they'll have more there's some more opportunity to use it. Specifically, I would also say that if people didn't know this, the county right now, they built these quote unquote Wi-Fi blasters on Columbia Pike, based in and they have no legal authority to do that other than a letter they received from the telecommunications lobby saying that they could do it for the duration of the pandemic.
Mhm.
I think it's a very precarious position to be in. We don't need to be. I mean, we can form the authority and take over those assets. So that's number one. Number two, what I'd like to see is them to do a very serious and robust feasibility study that tells them what it would cost to do something like a Chattanooga network or a Hillsborough network, where you're basically, we would want to probably prioritize starting in some of the neighborhoods or parts of the county right now that are underserved, that we know are underserved. But basically, if any infrastructure is being built out, should be planned to let people subscribe to it and provide a better service than we have right now through the incumbents. So that would be what we'd like to see, coming next, is that this feasibility study actually shows what it would take to do that. So I guess like I don't know if that, I hope that answers the question, but that's the kind of like one first step, second step that I would like, we would like to, as an organization, like to see them take. But I mean, yeah, ideally we would like to see Arlington create a municipal network. Whether that, I mean, that could operate a number of ways. Doesn't necessarily have to be the county providing the service directly. I think that would be the easiest way to do it, frankly, rather than trying to find a private part. The public-private partnership, I think, is very difficult. And I mean, or doing a kind of open access network can also be difficult. I mean, you have to find people that come on it and all of that. But I mean, there are options. And I think that some of those things can be studied in a feasibility study. But yeah. So anyway, that's what we would like to say.
Mike?
What about things like the JBG thing? We have a success on our belt now. We finally got that system used for for the national landing. And can we do more of that kind of thing? Would we need authority to do that? It just seems like a good model.
I mean, having an authority would help them do a lot of things. I mean, having the authority would allow them to build laterals onto private property, to connect actual physical assets to private property. I mean, there's kind of things they can't do now. So if they want to do more of that, and they want to take the burden off, I mean, they could potentially do that and still use the leasing system. But I mean, all these things, they can be debated, obviously. I honestly don't think it's necessarily ideal. Like for me, the reason I think that the beauty of the public network, like things like you'd have, like once again, looking at Chattanooga and a host of other networks or cities that have already built their own network, is that you have a not-for-profit provider that's trying to provide this as a utility benefit. And I think that as you've seen a lot of those networks, what's been amazing about them, if you look at some of these networks that are existing, rather than the cost going up over time, like you see with Verizon or AT&T and Comcast, the prices go down as they expand the network, because they're not necessarily trying to make a profit. I mean, they're trying to cover the cost, but they're also not cherry picking. They're also doing all kinds of amazing digital equity programs. And so how you do that when you have a multitude of private providers that you're leasing to, I don't know. I don't think that hasn't been shown to work yet, as far as I can tell. So I mean, that, once again, like if the county wants to go that path, they could. But having the authority, yes, would help them do a lot more with the network and potentially make it more appealing to private entities if they wanted to go a leasing route. Yes.
Mike?
So Tim, thanks for your work on this. It sounds like you're making good progress. I'll bet you noticed that the county entered into a exclusive lease for the bulk of the dark fiber with JBG Smith. And there's a couple aspects of that I wonder if they might be an opportunity for your effort. The first was the proceeds were associated with making progress on the county's digital equity intentions. So there's $3.7 million that it was at least sort of rhetorically associated with allowing the county to move forward with a variety of things, including digital equity. And the other is there's a joint management agreement that would allow the landlord and the county to have one manager of the fiber network and the electronics that build it out. Is it possible that with an authority and with the uncommitted fiber available to the authority, that the authority you're talking about could just be a third party in that common management agreement?
There's no reason why they can't. I mean, like the authority is kind of a weird thing, because it's kind of like this, magic wand type of function that is really just a legal authority that the state provides them, and so they can still have work separated out in different ways and have the authority, basically just as a separate entity that is doing that kind of work. The Virginia law also, provides the opportunities for governments and localities to transfer assets between government entities without having bids or anything like that. So it would allow them to move around their assets if they needed to. Like I said, I when you get to that kind of higher level kind of engineering and administrative decisions, that's kind of above my comprehension and my competencies. But I think I think it could, based on what we see with the way other localities are using their broadband authorities.
Tim, can I go for a little bit of a clarification here? I thought that your earlier proposal was to get the county to turn over the entire asset to the authority. And I'm observing that now that they've done a century-long lease with another party, it's unlikely that that would happen. But since that current arrangement has a joint management agreement in it, maybe the objective should be not so much the transfer of the asset, but the transfer of the dark threads that aren't already committed elsewhere and participation by the new authority in the joint management of the shared resource.
Mike,
I don't think they're going to take it away from JBG Smith now that they've signed a 100-year lease.
Mike, can I just interject for a moment, just for clarification? This is Takis.
Sure.
The agreement with JBG is only covering the use of a partial asset. So there are a lot more fiber channels available for us. We keep them, we manage them. And my understanding is, because we have asked that, all options are feasible through the capacity that this remaining capacity would have. The only point where we intersect with JBG is who would maintain, if something happens to the fiber, if in a repair something goes awry and we have to repair, then they have certain obligations to repair. They would have to repair the entirety of the asset. If they cut the cable, they will have to repair it in its entirety. But not only theoretically, practically as well, there is an asset that could be transferred or managed by a dedicated authority in Crystal City, in National Landing as well. So that's not off the books.
Thank you.
The thing is that from what I understand, like the county still has over 600 something strands.
Yeah.
864, I think.
Right. So
Yeah.
in total, sorry, 600. It was 600 something that was available for lease.
Right.
Yeah, in total, it's even much higher than that. So what they gave to JBG, that's like nothing. It's as far as I can tell, in terms of the amount of infrastructure that's been handed over to them, that seems pretty. There's just like a ton of capacity left over for that can be turned over to the authority. I still advocate that they should turn over everything to the authority, because just why not? The authority has the most ability to use the assets. Like I said, Jack Belcher and whoever is in charge of Connect Arlington right now, you form the authority. Okay, Jack now is head of the authority. Nothing's changed. It's just, it's just that, you haven't even built out or hired anybody new. It's just that you're placing all these assets under the authority instead. That's what, that was the advice that was given to us from the guy who set up the Eastern Shore Broadband Authority. So I don't understand why they don't just form the authority and transfer everything to it, and then you let the authority do it at once.
Tim, you also have a question from Phil in the chat, and then John, you'll be next. When, if all deserving communities in Arlington are served, what level of continuing funding would be required?
That's exactly what the feasibility study should be determining. It should be determining what it would cost to build out and to service, and what the operating costs will be long term. The county is going to have to bond to build this out. If it's going to do anything substantial. I haven't seen any. There's no public network that exists out there that hasn't done that, with the exception of Ammon, but they had access to legal tools that we don't in Virginia, unfortunately. But so the feasibility study should be determining cost. I can't tell you how much it would cost.
Understand.
Yeah.
Thank you. And John, next.
Thanks. So Tim, you said then the authority can do whatever it wants, and my favorite question around here is, are you aware of any existing board policy, guidance, direction on what the priorities and strategic vision for such an authority might be, or is that a to be done?
So I mean, for what we've asked is that should be kind of determined in this coming up with the criteria for an RFP for feasibility study. I mean, we need to ask what questions, what if we form an authority and we're going to look at increasing the scope to the entire county. I mean, what, there's the kind of questions kind of need to be hashed out.
So you're not aware of any existing kind of strategic guidance in this space?
I mean, they have some strategic. Well, I don't know about strategic guidance. I think the majority of the guidance right now is just dealing with digital divide issues. And so, I mean, they originally were supposed to do a project with New Urbana that was supposed to be kind of pilot on using CBRS to provide wireless internet access to a few of these community affordable units owned by AHC. Before I understand, like they've walked away from doing that. Based on some technology issues. So I think that, other than trying to bridge the digital divide, I don't know that they have a strategic plan that looks at this as a kind of community development or economic development writ large kind of project. But I mean, I obviously I think that should be figuring into it. I mean, just the level of services you can get if you're not like kind of a carrier grade client. In Arlington isn't really that great. I mean, if you look at what they're doing over in Chattanooga or in Hillsborough, the two examples we have from our broadband forum, like you can go and get 1, 2, 3 gigs symmetrical for small businesses, that need it and want it. And that's pretty cheap by comparison to what you'd pay for it here if you can even get it.
Great,
so
thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? All right, Tim, as always, Jackie, you have one? All right, final one. Go ahead.
Yes.
Jackie, we're having difficulty hearing you. I think we're not hearing you. Do you want to put your question in the chat?
Not hearing you.
Maybe your headpiece, your mouthpiece, put that down. There we go.
Now, can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
All right. So sorry. That's why I wear it. Yes, I'm not sure that I fully understand the relationship legally, I guess, between the authority and the public space and the private space.
Mm.
So it sounds to the layman a lot like this is a public utility that's being formed that would basically potentially replace private providers. So my first, I guess, question is related to why is that not what this is, or is that what this is? And then the second part of that is, as taxpayers, what are the differences in accountability for us between the county owning these assets and managing these assets? And maybe it would be our own Jack Belcher, but he would managing an authority. But what's the difference in accountability to the public if it's the authority taking the action versus the county?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Essentially, the way the authority would work is that the county would be forming a separate board to run it, and I think that's generally going to be people who are in charge of it. I mean, it has obviously it has a kind of public interest. I mean, obviously some of this would probably come out in whatever work goes into building a charter for it. But I mean, this is a public interest entity that's would be building out infrastructure for public interest as a utility. Yes. So I mean, in terms of accountability, the board will decide who goes on it. I imagine one of the board members or somebody from the county government maybe would be appointed to the board along with other citizens who are experts in various aspects of building out a broadband provider. So the accountability, I mean, is kind of, I don't want to say it's exactly the same, but it should, in theory, it should be at least responsive as a community owned and community governed kind of asset. I mean, it's obviously, I would say that in terms of accountability, it's going to be orders of magnitude higher than it is with investor owned corporate utilities. And I think you'll have much more opportunity to if it being a locally owned asset or utility, that will have a lot more opportunity to determine how it's operating. But like I said, I mean, I think some of that can be, I think you can by in terms of how you structure its charter and all of its kind of mandates, I think that would really help go a long way in terms of making sure that it is accountable. And there may need to be kind of subcommittees or commissions that provide input at a citizen level to it. I mean, those are kind of more in the future questions, but I mean, it's a good one, and I don't have a necessarily kind of a straightforward answer to it. But I think, like I said, I mean, just in terms of being able to set a charter that determines what this thing is going to be doing, I think we'll be able to determine the parameters of its accountability. So I hope that.
What about the first question?
The first question, I mean, to the degree that it will displace the existing providers, I mean, that is a question of whether it's providing better service for value over time. And I think that, with all the public networks that have been created over time, like it's a process because, it has to establish itself. It has to, demonstrate its ability to essentially compete. I mean, it really is kind of a competitor that is operating in the same environment. But with different priorities and different principles. So
And different funding.
And different funding. But I mean, ultimately, the goal is for all these municipal providers is to reach a subscriber base that covers its operations. So
the answer to the question is yes, it would be a public authority, and yes, on the long term, it might displace private sector in favor of this public authority. Is that what you're telling me? Yes, the answer
if it's
is yes.
doing a better job, yes, I would hope it is.
Mike, you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question, Jackie, and I want to voice what I think my answer is, so Tim can either correct it or not. It will change the basis for competition in the private sector. From right now, which is, can I get exclusive access to this group of customers through my physical connectivity, and therefore have very little competition regarding my quality of service or my accountability to anybody. And it will instead say everybody's on a common playing field regarding access to this dark fiber. So the nature of the competition would change to more of what I think you were looking for. Like, can I keep my customers happy? Can I keep the county government happy with my quality of delivered services, not with my exclusivity of connectivity in a certain geographic space. So it's going to expose the private sector to more competitors, but I think for all the right price and quality of service reasons. Does that sound right, Tim?
I mean, I think what we've seen is that the municipalities that have formed successful public providers is that what you'll see is that the competitors will start lowering their prices. But even then, I don't think that they do a very good job. I mean, like I said, I mean, there is different ways to structure this thing. I mean, you could have an open access network where the county is variously just providing the infrastructure, and then other companies are competing to provide service over it. That could be done. I mean, some of the people we've talked to who usually do the consultants that usually do this have said that network, that type of network is varyingly successful, basically, and especially in terms of paying off the assets. If the county is bonding for it and all that, it's much slower. an uncertain return, basically, because there's so many more players involved in it. So I mean, ultimately, I would just say that like we need to start. We think you start thinking of broadband or internet as a utility. And right now, we only have one water that's coming into our homes, right? I mean, do we think we should have? I mean, just it makes sense to just have one provider of certain things that are natural monopolies. And with something like as important as broadband, I mean, I just think it would be better if there was a nonprofit provider of sorts, and that it has to be the public, then so be it. But I mean, I have no problem with them displacing the for-profit. I mean, personally, I mean, that might not be a popular opinion, but I mean, I'm just saying that they have performed very poorly, and they have generally used their monopoly profits to lobby the government in various ways to decrease the level of service and increase the cost of it, for subscribers. And so nonprofit, community-oriented broadband is not operating that way. So that.
Tim, we have two more questions, one from Phil and then John, and then we really do need to move on to the next. Charles, you have a question? Okay, then we really do need to, that will be the end.
So
Phil asked, can you say which board members you approached and what their views were? So you said you had three, I think, Tim, who were
so Matt, Takis, and Christian are the people who have unambiguously told us they support at least doing a feasibility study that would look at a countywide scope, and would look at fiber to the home as the kind of technology that's employed. We have reached out to Katie Crystal multiple times. She has not responded, or has basically kind of deferred, and Libby has not ever responded to a request to meet and talk about it. So I don't know whether that means they're against it. I don't know, but I can only tell you that in terms of the people that we know that are supportive of that, there's the three. Sorry
Okay.
to name names, but
well, you were asked the question, so thank you. John, and then Charles.
Mary, just to
Takis?
say, the appropriation for doing the feasibility study and the guidance, the instruction, the guidance to the county manager to do that, it was unanimous.
Unanimous. So everybody was in favor of the feasibility study. John?
So I was not a question, but I was ready to move on to the part of the program where we discuss it amongst the commissioners about what we're going to do with the information that Tim has presented to us, if anything. So
okay, so you can hold.
I'm ready to move there. Yeah.
Great. Okay. And Charles, do you have a final question for Tim, or?
Well, it wasn't really a question. I was just going to say that even within RL Fiber, we have different ways of presenting our argument. And I'm not disagreeing with Tim necessarily, but I would put the emphasis in different places. With a county-owned and operated optical fiber network, we would not necessarily be displacing the ISPs that are in operation right now. At least from my point of view, I don't see any reason why, if they want to continue providing the service they are doing right now, they should be allowed to do so. There would just be another competitor in the market. Further than that, another possibility for the Broadband Authority to consider as they set up this municipal network would be to allow the commercial ISPs to operate over it under a licensing agreement with the county. Now, I'm in no position to say that's the way it's going to be, or that even should be. But once again, that's one of the alternatives that the Broadband Authority needs to consider as they figure out how we should go forward. As far as the economics and the financing behind this, what I would love to see happen is for this Broadband Authority and the county network that they manage to be operated on a basis that it pays for itself. It's charging either licensing fees to ISPs that provide their services through it, or it's charging connection fees to businesses and residents in the county. And the expectation that I would like to see it aim for, and what has been done in other cities that have set up similar networks, is that it be self-supporting. So that's all I have. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Charles. Thank you. And Tim, thank you. You've been kind enough to brief us multiple times, and your passion has not waned. So appreciate you continuing to have people look at this issue and see the best way to, particularly the underserved in the county. So thank you so much, and we look forward to you keeping us posted, and we appreciate you sharing the slides and also the link.
Thank you to you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. John, you had a comment.
Yeah, so I think this is a really interesting proposal, an interesting idea. I think the work that Arl Fiber has done to get the appropriations for the feasibility study is commendable. And I think that the commissioners are very much interested in understanding this further. What I would recommend is that the board would benefit from our guidance and counsel on what aspects the feasibility study should address, what critical questions should be addressed, because the devil is in the detail for this kind of thing, right?
That's right.
The law that allows us to create this this authority is very vague in terms of the requirements for it. So we're kind of like, you have to appoint a board, like that's about it, right? And beyond that, how the appointments happen, all of that kind of stuff. To Jackie's question about accountability and transparency, what the priorities would be, all of those kinds of things, the cost structure, the competitiveness, those are all important factors. So I would recommend that, Mary, we take a motion to provide such opinion, and that you maybe assign a lead drafter to collect input from commissioners. I'm not volunteering for that position because I'm tapped out at the moment, but I would be happy to provide thoughts to lead drafter.
Good. Okay.
And if you like that idea, I'd be happy to make that motion.
All right. Motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Thank you. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Discussion?
Aye.
Would you like, Phil, you need more discussion to vote?
Yes, as a practical matter, how would we arrive at our advice?
I think whoever Mary would designate to lead the draft would produce and solicit input from the commissioners as to the factors and considerations that the feasibility study should, in our wisdom, address. That draft would then be circulated back to the commission for review and comment and final approval at a following commission meeting once we have a consensus.
Agreed. Phil, does that make sense?
I'm a little skeptical about how smoothly that would work and how much effort is involved to do that, leading to very specific advice, especially since there's no well-formed issue that I can see.
You mean well-formed issue in terms of what I think, John, let me make sure that I'm understanding. My understanding of that motion is to ask specific questions that would help framing what information they would get from the feasibility study as well.
Right.
Correct?
What are the key strategic issues that the feasibility study should address?
Yeah. So this is not establish the broadband authority, Phil. This is give guidance of some questions that could be answered by the feasibility study.
Have we been given a copy of the objectives of the feasibility study and the questions that it will answer? You know, for example, my question on continuing funding, if and when all deserving communities are served. And there would be quite a few others.
Right, because it's in the procurement, we actually asked the county to make comment about that, but right now, because it's in procurement, we probably will not get the framing until it's made public.
I think
So-
what we would probably have access to would be the board report and the action that the board took at the meeting, and the discussion and testimony on the record regarding that board action to
Right.
inform us as to the current thinking.
That's right, and we can make that available. Any other questions before
I want to put no impediment in the way of the ITech forming an opinion on an issue and advancing it to the board. So I will support the motion.
All right, Jackie, do you have another question, a clarifying question?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I think all of this is provided someone steps forward and is willing to take this on, because it's a substantial task, and I'm not volunteering. And then the second thing is that I think it's possible this is a significant enough topic so that we might want to solicit input from the public about what questions they would want to see answered in a feasibility study. I'm a little concerned about waiting until after the procurement, because the procurement is going to have the criteria in it.
That's
for
right.
the feasibility study. So
That's right.
after the fact, I don't think does much. So yes, I think we should provide advice, but after the procurement, I'm not sure that it's advice for anything particular, unless
No, I think what we were
unless
saying-
part of the fees, it could be that part of it, we ask that part of the feasibility study be that they include seeking public information about what criteria should be addressed. And
Right.
maybe we could do that. And that's a very straightforward, simple thing to say, we want this procurement to include information and consultation with the public on what should be covered.
Mhm. Thanks, Jackie. Mike,
So I too was laying back on seconding the motion for fear of being mistaken for someone who wanted to lead the effort. I believe Frank is absent tonight. Am I correct about
Frank
that?
is in the air. He is
Yeah, okay.
going to visit family for Thanksgiving, so he is he could not be with us.
Yeah, and I bring him up only because I know he has a deep legal understanding of this, and it seems in terms of the RFP stage of this, we really need somebody from the commission who can say what's going to be legally sufficient for the county vis-a-vis the state. And then in the RFP itself, you could build in public engagement. You know, that one of the things we're going to do in the context of the feasibility study is to go out and collect information from the public. So I think we could structure them that way. I don't feel particularly confident on the what's legal, what's not legal question, but I do think in the feasibility study that would have to be kind of a threshold question. You know, what is it that we can do, not just what do we want to do?
Right, right. And we actually have the benefit of two lawyers on this commission. So Gary and Frank. So yeah, no, I think we're well placed there. Thanks. All right, we do have a motion on the table. Is there I'll go through one more time. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Anyone abstaining?
Abstain.
Okay. All right. All right. We will, sounds like motion passed, and it is my job to find the talent for us to do that, and we will keep you posted in December meeting. All right. Mike, that's an old hand, right? I'm assuming.
Mary, I would also be remiss if I didn't provide my persistent reminder at every meeting that the open meeting law does provide the opportunity to have closed meetings outside of the public realm for items, and I'm quoting here, discussion or consideration of the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, where if made public initially, the financial interests of the governmental unit would be adversely affected. I think the RFP process fits that. So I would imagine that my fellow commissioners stand at the ready to have such a closed meeting should our consultation be sought.
Thank you, John.
Yes.
Takas, I'm very glad you could join us. I didn't specifically put you on the agenda, but I did send a little note to Grace saying we might have some questions for him. Frank and I had, as I said, Frank sends his regrets. He is literally in the air flying, but we had a conversation with you in November. Any thoughts you want to comment on this particular, but our major conversation was about the digital element and the role of this commission, and you have many times said to us, not only verbally but also written to us, thank you very much, that our perspective and our advice and the questions we send you are helpful. So I'm delighted that you could carve out an evening to join us, and I give you defer and give you some time to address the commissioners.
Thank you, Mary. Happy to be here. I apologize that I couldn't be as many times as I would have wished. For many reasons, there was always conflict, and it was just a very busy year behind us. I definitely think that I was observing the discussion and conferring, transmitting to my colleagues the level of discussion about the digital element, the digital element in the comprehensive plan. Right now, since we have been busy with ARPA funding, still with fighting the pandemic, and we haven't geared for the next budget discussion, and and much less for the next CIP discussion. However, I think that this in between. We will find I'm trying to carve out, to use your terminology, to carve out time and find the appropriate venue to discuss that. To me, there is a significant discussion about data privacy, about cybersecurity, about many aspects of what this digital element can be. It begins also to dawn for other stakeholders. For example, I just had long conversations about electrification of transportation, electrification of buildings. We will need an entire infrastructure of communications and data exchange to make these infrastructures functional and serving for us. This also intersects with ideas of of using broadband as a utility, right? It's not a privilege anymore, or an option, or an optional element of daily life. It will be an absolutely, the mere definition of a utility is it's absolutely necessary to live in a place. You cannot live, well, theoretically you can, but actually you can't live without electricity. You can't live without water, and the same way we're approaching a point where it's definitely not possible to live without access to internet services. So I have long conversations pending with the department to see where they are and how they think about that. I definitely think that's worth pursuing. I'm also talking to planning commissioners. They have quite a sway with elements of the comprehensive plan, and we will be in conversation. My goal is for the next year, both budget and CIP sessions, to at least respond to the commission and give you the board's position to this. For now, I don't think that most of my colleagues have really understand or comprehend why this is so fundamentally important to be added to the comprehensive plan. They kind of understand that, but it's still fuzzy. It needs to be operationalized and, you know, made very, very clear. That's just the status. I continue to be committed to this. I really believe in this. I also think that next year we'll have you know, a robust discussion about cybersecurity and data privacy. With the pilot in Clarendon, I think that several questions will emerge, and they will have to be answered. I expect that our staff will report to on this pilot, and there are several questions coming from different places in Arlington, including this commission, including the City Federation and others. So I do believe that we need to that we will have to have a venue to answer these questions, and I'm working on this. When will this happen? My planning is to turn on the heat on that around February, March, right about the moment that we are looking at budgetary appropriations for the next year, or ordinary, you know, regular budget.
Thank you. And
So,
thank
and
you
again,
also.
thank you for supporting us with so much work. I made a note here to make sure that we publicize as much as possible and share the RFP for the broadband study, so that you can weigh in. I think it's a good thing to invite feedback at the initial stage.
Great, thank you. And we really do appreciate your support, and you have certainly been very active in these issues. So, and we also, I know you have already committed to attend the privacy session that we'll sponsor in January. So thank you again for, you know, the things that we're involved in. You're showing up for. So we really appreciate the continued dialogue and also the action. I mean, you are figuring out what the best route is and the strategy to get this at the center, for not just now, but in the future. I mean, I think all of us on this commission really think it's a critical element for guidance. And as John continues to ask, what's the strategic framework? And it's not just now, it's for all the things that are going to happen in the future that we really believe in it. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Unfortunately, I have to jump to a civic association meeting that started at 7.
All right.
It is actually a great thing that you start at 6, because this makes it easier for me, at least.
Good. All right.
Thank you.
You take care and happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you, to everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope I'll see you next month.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Speaking of privacy session, but before we get there, I have the date of our meeting next month is the 22nd of December. I wanted, before we stuck with that schedule, I just wanted a pulse. You know, you all have been great at participating. We've had, you know, we haven't had quorum issues at all. I just, particularly because there'll be no guest speakers, we're just going to talk about what the important issues are that we want to focus on. We'll also obviously have some conversations about the privacy session. So I wanted to make sure that we'd have as near full complement as we could. So I wanted to ask, is the 22nd doable, or do you want to move it back a Wednesday? What's the sense of the group?
Mary, that's good for me. This is Andrea.
Okay, thanks. So the 22nd is okay, Andrea?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right. John?
I can do either.
Okay, Mike, Phil?
22nd fine.
Okay.
Looks good to me.
Okay, just wanted to check because that's fine.
Let be a closed meeting in all or in part or not at all? Or how do you see it?
Phil, it'll depend on what happens with that RFP. We won't, our discussion about the items we want to make sure we focus on will not be, that'll be public. But if there's some discussion around, as John was mentioning, that it might be partially closed. We'll see. All right. I'll get back to you on that one. We'll see if what the time, I do not know what the time frame is of, and we'll get more updated on that. All right, so we'll go with the 22nd, and now we move on to privacy session. One of the things I wanted to share is the Emergency Preparedness Advisory Commission wants to co-sponsor with us because they see it as an important issue as well. So wanted to have discussion about, I just sent out that draft because I wanted to get us started about what the objective is before we'll figure out who's going to be on the panel and things like that once we have clarity around what we want the objectives to be, right? So I'll open it up to the floor. You all have seen the draft to get us started about the privacy session. What's your sense? Mike?
Yeah, I've shared a little with you, Mary, by email. I'm a little afraid of the issue of privacy writ large and how much consumers in the country have already displayed their dissatisfaction with their general state of privacy. So I'm not sure we can fix that for people. So I'm interested in trying to narrow this down. And I'll say this from a conversation with John in the interim. Should the question be, should Arlington County employ the NIST Enterprise Risk Management Framework of January 2020 in its approach to protecting privacy for its citizens? I think the answer to that is yes, but that's not an unwieldy question. That's like a here's a framework that's tried and true elsewhere. And then I'm also fearful that if we try to use the particularities of the Clarendon project, it's not necessarily representative of much else going on in the county that involves people's private information. And so even if you solve the problem for that narrow scope, which I think is an important thing to do, it won't necessarily say much at all about the bulk of data that's personally identifiable that is collected and used by the county. So I would advocate for being very specific about what we're asking the public to comment on, because I'll say, going back to my own white paper, I kind of put that in the issues of, now I forget my own word, issues of concern, ones that we're concerned about this, but we don't have a lot to say about, for example, the consent on a Google search account or the privacy policy on a Facebook account. So we need to steer people to county related business about privacy and away from the giant international challenges of privacy.
So Mike, what you're advocating is we make the NIST, on that panel, we just make sure people understand what the NIST framework is and said, is this something that the Arlington residents are comfortable with? That's your,
yes, and I
that
think
would be what you'd be comfortable with.
I agree. And I think there's a series of judgments that you're asked to make as you embark on using that framework. And so we'd be trying to get people to weigh in on those judgments in a very scripted way.
Yeah. Okay, great. Jackie?
Hi. Yes, I also agree that we need to have our priorities more narrowly focused. Civic Federation, and I think I sent you I didn't send the whole committee, but I sent you and Frank a privacy panel that Civic Federation did last April with speakers, and that was trying to deal with the broad topic of how is this being discussed nationally and what are the things we're concerned. I think particularly following up on the presentation that we had at CivFed on the zone, that the area of most interest right now is what is Arlington's privacy policy going to be? What should it be? And how can we move that discussion along? So I could see if we, and that is what Civic Federation is working on now as our follow-up to that. We're trying to identify what factors we would have as priorities for including in a privacy policy. So I think some way of looking at best practice privacy policies in other parts of the country or in Virginia, the NIST, the current principles that are being used for the demonstration zone project, the 5 principles, which were the so-called draft Arlington policy. I think if we were to look at policies per se and what things are included in them and get feedback from the audience on what are we leaving out or what is most important or what are the biggest concerns that Arlington address in their privacy policy, we could have something that was both narrow and brought up the broader questions, but in a specific Arlington context.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And
Good.
CivFed's working on it too, so we would have 3, major groups that, we will be advising the board on it. So all the better if we can get something that really grows out of multiple organizations' work.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Other comments?
Do we want to partner with CivFed on that, Mary? Is that possible or allowable?
Absolutely. We could. We've got EPAC and CivFed. If CivFed wants to join after they see the
yeah, I think
revised.
I'm happy to take it back to CivFed. That would require approval at a higher level than me. I'm the one who's helping coordinate with. We have 2 CivFed committees that are working on this now. So there's at least 2 leads there, and we're working with our chairman of the board to make sure we have a joint project of these 2 committees. So we would have to figure out some way to fold that in, and probably would be through our board chair, who's also our vice chair, Nicole Marlene.
If possible, Mary, that would be my recommendation, because we are not very well practiced at putting on events, and producing an event that is a good event is no small task. So I think we could probably lean on our friends and neighbors who have done that on a regular basis to maybe help us with that.
Yeah, and we'll have the
any,
revised. Go ahead, Phil.
Have any specific speakers been engaged or asked if they would participate? And if so, what have we told them about what we want to accomplish and what they could say that would be helpful?
Phil, no, I have obviously ideas, but I wanted to make sure we were consistent and clear about the scope and the objective before we move to who could be on the panel. So no. The only thing that has been discussed is the date, the 27th, because we wanted to make sure Takas was able to attend. And we thought it'd be best to keep it as far away from the beginning of January, because people are just getting back from holiday and all those things. So the things that have been determined, is at least the, looking at the date, and now discussion around the objective, and then we'll move to who could do it once we figure out what the scope is.
Yeah, and I would second the thoughts on focusing the conversation on what Arlington County's privacy policy should be. within the context of the NIST framework. It asks you to select a profile for your organization, a target profile on the various different capabilities. And I think if we had the conversation around what those things are, what the various reasons why you might be higher or lower on those different attributes of the profile, what the trade-offs are, that might help inform the community conversation in a very micro targeted way.
Okay, great. All right. So how about this for next step, that we go back and do some redrafting of this and then circulate it, and then we can confirm. Mike, I know you have a hand up. We confirm at our December meeting, and then CivFed can really make a decision about whether they want to go forth with what we're proposing. Mike?
Mary, quickly on the event design thing, I'm thinking that this is not intended to be presentation heavy, but eliciting from the public heavy. And so you need enough organization or facilitation to pose the questions, but I don't think we want to be telling people much. I think we want to be asking people, where their values are about this. A trickier thing than a panel of talking heads.
Yes. Well, we do have the expertise to do that. We do. Some of us do that in our day job, so we can do that. I'm pretty confident we can do that. And to your point, Mike, I think the part of the objective of this is to get a pulse of the community, right? To present a framework and then get a pulse of the community, because these are important questions, right? And maybe it's not something that people have at the first on their agenda that they expect from a county, but I do think it's important for us to ask these questions. Jackie?
Yeah, I do think I agree. Focusing on the public's perspective and how that gets operationalized is really a main task that this group could take on. And one of the things the public needs is, yes, you're right. There's sort of nationally this both angst and anger over where is privacy. People don't exactly know, and they're worried about it, but they don't know whether they're, which end of, they don't even know sometimes which end of the spectrum their opinion is on. Yes. I know I vacillate myself on, I want that new app, but maybe I don't. But I do think one of the things that the public needs to help elicit this is perhaps a menu of considerations so that they can identify what considerations are most important to them. I don't think on a sort of cold call basis the public could come up with their top 5 criteria. So that's where the NIST and the profile and tools like it, if we convert them to layman's language as options, we can actually throw them out and say, here's 5 things that are identified, as the areas for NIST, or here's 5 things that Arlington's come up with, and, kind of which ones should we talk about first, or what are the first top 3 we talk about, or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, this really is the beginning of the conversation, right? I think that's our goal, is that this will be this won't be the only session, I'm sure, that happens in the county. I mean, I think we just wanted to bring this to the fore and make sure that people had an opportunity to have some framework and then really have a pulse and discussion. But yeah, definitely, I don't see this as the end.
That's the other part of it, is we really need to have someone from authority from the county who can tell us where this process is at and how they envision going forward. I mean, ideally beforehand, so that we can be working with the county to make this a listening session for them as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So just to fertilize the conversation, do you think it might be interesting to have someone from the county present what was done and what was supposed to be done in connection with the so-called Clarendon pilot, and get a sense of whether people think that was a great idea, whether we should do a lot more, or whether we should not do anything more along that line at all.
Are you, may I try a try at that, and John can help me? Um, what we did was identified that what we had was not policy. That was the first step that we took, is that we had documents that were written saying Arlington privacy policy says, here are the 5 points. And we said, when was that adopted? And it was determined, no, it hadn't been adopted. So our first point was to say, you can adopt these as principles for the project, but we don't have policy. So that was first. And then it was determined that these 5 principles that had been previously identified would be used operationally and tested in the project. And I would say we have been doing that, although not necessarily going to those 5 things. There are a lot of the papers do reference those in answering the questions. And then because it's not at a detail level, these are 5 very general statements like transparency. We've been using the NIST framework to do the more detailed level review. So I would say the main thing from the project is to identify how critical it is that we have a policy. And I guess one of the other things that's been identified as we're going through the NIST is there's a distinct difference between our answers to questions at the project level and at the county level. Namely, we as a committee can give the answers to the profile questions on a project level, whereas we are not in a position to answer those questions, I would say, to any degree at all, with respect to the county. So for most of the profile, even though we've spent a lot of time talking about it, we're not in a position to even begin to do a profile on what is right now county policy or operational policy.
Yeah, and I would second everything that Jackie said and add that I think the privacy aspects of the Clarendon demonstration project are the strongest aspects of the project, and the other questions about why this use case, why this location, why this technology, I think might lead us down a rabbit hole that takes us off course. And so I don't know that it's a good kind of archetype to hold up for inspection for those reasons. I think some of the learnings that have come out of that, maybe we can get someone from the county to talk about where we're at, but I think it's clear to Jackie and I that there is very good intentions and very hardworking people who want to do the right thing, and it is the
Absolutely.
Overall program inside the government is nascent at this point.
And
Thanks,
the
John.
other exciting thing I just need to mention is we talk about privacy, and then John listed a list of other questions and areas that are not our purview, but are also equally important questions, which we've also been asking. And I would say the exciting thing, I think, is that those questions are the digital element questions.
Right.
That's what they are. Those are the questions where and that we're trying to address that in CIF, and I don't know if we'll really get to it or not. And that is, what are the criteria you use for making decisions to go forward with new technologies, particularly those that involve data collection? And those are the digital questions, and those should be part of the digital comprehensive plan. And then you would have a framework for answering those questions when you have something new coming along. Is it is this the highest priority use case, or is this one that somebody else put on the table for us? And right now, we don't know the difference between something that's a high use case and something somebody else put on the table because they want it.
Mike?
I find this conversation very encouraging. And so I would say, to boil it down to the event design. So whatever background information is presented before we begin to elicit the public's point of view, I think would be about the background of privacy policy in Arlington County, not about any particular project. But then I think I would love if we came out of it saying, and if you don't have a process for screening in and out IT projects in which you can insert this privacy test, then what good is a privacy policy? Because we need to hang this privacy policy on some pre-investment screening process where somebody gets to say yes and somebody gets to say no, or somebody gets to say go back and improve the privacy part of it. But this cannot stand on its own. This needs to be a step in a process that has business sense to it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think I've certainly thank you. And if there are any other comments, observations as you're thinking about this between now and our December meeting, let me know, and we'll make sure and get a draft out to you so you can comment and get a sense before we get to December, because we'll start advertising it the beginning of January, because holiday it'll just get lost. So we just want to make sure we get as many people as we can. Okay, the next one, and I'm mindful that we have 4 more minutes, but Mike had sent just before our last meeting, a motion about commenting, and I know there was some discussion about that this is what we do traditionally anyway, but I wanted to make sure and have it in front of you all so that we could make the, whether you want to declare this is our traditional way that we operate, or whether you wanted to move forward with the formal declaration. So I wanted to make sure that you had that opportunity. Mike, do you want to say any comments about this motion you've made?
In the interest of time and good relations with the board, I'm happy to withdraw it. I would, however, be interested in to what extent we wish to offer opinions specifically about the dark fiber lease. I mean, in the other 2 instances, we did go ahead and offered an opinion, even though it seemed after the fact. And so the question I'd leave on the table, not as a motion, is, do we want to say that we would have liked the opportunity during what I would calculate to be at least the 7 months between in 2020, the county received the unsolicited proposal, and the July meeting where the board took action on it? We could have done a closed session with, confidentiality agreements or whatever. So I can withdraw the whole motion, but I'm still curious about how much energy there is within our group to opine about the quality of the century-long fixed price dark fiber lease.
Mike, are you just clarifying question before I open it up? Are you commenting not only on the process, but also the commenting on quote unquote the deal?
I think the two go hand in hand. I mean, the process thing for absolute sure. And I would say in some cases, I don't think I know enough about the thing to be firmly for it or against it. I'm kind of against it because generally my 35 years of experience, unsolicited proposals often lack a certain balance. And you really need to be thorough to determine whether citizens are getting as good a deal in an unsolicited proposal as are the proposers of that proposal. And I just say that as a general rule of the road.
Mm-hmm. Kevin, you had a comment?
I did. Just, I was part of that when the meeting, and I guess the guy from the Economic Development Authority spoke, and the members of the commission had great input, and they seemed to be different different opinions. And when Mike started talking about the 99-year lease and concerned about that, I thought I was all on board. And then when Jonathan talked about, really that's kind of industry understandable in the industry, and he was on the Broadband Commission, I thought that was real positive. So just the dynamics of the diversity of opinions is great, and it'd be great to come to some kind of consensus. It looked like we were battling internally almost, instead of having a consensus about the commission's opinion. That's all. Just great. Everyone's thoughtful and input, but it's just seemed like there's a lot somehow to get to that point. Everyone had good opinions, and I was rooting for Mike at first, and then Jonathan's ideas were really important too. So I don't have any greater comments than that. It was fun to see the dynamics. It'd be great to have some kind of melt that down sooner than to have to put our laundry out when we're talking
Got
to
it.
commissioners. That's all.
Right. Good point, Kevin. So there's in terms of looking at it from all different perspectives, and the good news is the commission has that, I think, some really on the continuum different perspectives. So thank you. Yes. John?
I would say I'd be very interested to see a considered draft of the type of opinion that Kevin describes. This is out of my space a little bit, but I would be very interested in seeing it and providing comment, feedback, and either supporting a consensus draft or providing feedback. So I have energy for that. I do not have energy to go do the research to have an informed opinion in advance.
And I'll try to move that just one step forward. I believe that 99-year lease thing is more about ground leasing in the commercial real estate world, not about dark fiber in the information technology world.
So that would be something, and I don't know if Jonathan is still. Jonathan, are you still? Yeah. So that's something that we'll have. Let's have some of that conversation, and we'll put that on the agenda, Mike, for next for December. Any other comments or thoughts about that? And thank you, Mike, for you've now endeared yourself probably to all commissioners for keeping us to time. I have one just one note. As soon as I get the information about budget, I will pass it on, because we will have an opportunity. They're having the county manager sponsoring it. It's only for commission chairs, but we can send in questions ahead of time. So I really would like the benefit of this group, but I haven't received any information yet. I'm going to go and see if there's what publicly has been shared with the board to make sure I'm up to speed. And that is scheduled for the 1st of. Jackie, do you have a question?
Just before you close, I had a question.
Okay. So I will keep you posted on that. And then Jackie, you have a question.
Yes, we were notified, and I believe both John and I notified you that there's going to be an update to the non-disclosure agreement that anyone handling Arlington data needs to sign, including the partners to the Clarendon project. And it was on for consent, and we recommended that it be taken off consent in part so that it could go to the two commissions for them to take a look to see if they thought there was anything substantive. They're saying it's not really a substantive change, but it applies to everybody, not just this project. And so we would hope that we could at least get a copy, maybe circulate it. It's going to be voted on December, so it'll be before our next meeting. Maybe we could just circulate it so that people are informed, and if there's something really alarming, we could say, gee, we need to write about this. But just because they, I believe, went ahead and followed our request so that we could look at it before it was voted on, I would like it to be circulated. Maybe they didn't send it to you. Maybe they're revising it again. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that is an ongoing conversation. We have requested a copy of it, the one that's on the consent agenda, and we will we'll keep you posted on that one. But thank you, and John, for flagging it. We have reached out.
And it would be
And-
great if we just, at the chairs level, just thank them for providing it to us before the vote, because I think they did actively go back and change the date for presentation because of our request.
Yeah, and I think Jackie made the important point that if you put it on the consent agenda, almost no one sees it. But this is actually a very good thing that should be publicized and maybe more appropriate for an informational item in the manager's briefing before the regular agenda. So, again, the privacy aspect of this project is the strongest piece of it in my view.
And your understanding is it was a template for an NDA?
No, they have an NDA. Council reviewed the NDA in the context of this project and determined that something needed to be changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so they're updating the NDA. It'll be an update that applies to everyone, but it specifically applies to this project.
Yeah, and I think it was part of the back and forth between George Mason, who's a project partner and doesn't currently have access to the data because they don't have the data sharing agreement. So it's the negotiation on the legal wording between George Mason and the county.
And this kind of data sharing with universities is obviously will be more and more common.
Absolutely.
So we thought it was something that both committees would want to at least look at to see what it is we have going forward. And
Great.
anyway, just because they did it and we asked, we just want to make sure it's recognized.
Okay, wonderful. Good. Well, thank you all. Well, once again, thank you. We covered the waterfront, and you notice there was a couple of announcements. Jack Belcher is now named Chief Technology Innovation Officer in addition to his CIO duties, and we have some applications for commissioner. I'm happy to report, and finally, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. We hope Frank sends his happy Thanksgiving as well. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I apologize for our late, but this has been an important
I'll do it.
conversation.
I so move.
Thank you, Phil. Second?
Second.
Thank you,
Yes.
John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposing? All right. All right. Well, I will see you in December, but you'll get emails from us before then. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank
all.
you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.